Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and today I am reviewing a book from Maxwell and Thomson Reuters Group. It is in the Common Law Library series and it's called Bowstead Reynolds on Agency. It will be known to many of you as the premier publication in this area. It's where the law can be found. These books are most important. They are probably the most important single books that we have available to find where the law actually is, apart from, of course, Halsbury's Laws of England themselves. But this particular book is very, very important. The new edition is now out, and I'm recording this in 2018. It's the 21st edition of the book, now edited by Peter Watts, Queen's Counsel, and F.M.B. Reynolds, Queen's Counsel. And Elizabeth and I have talked about the book. She's done the first draft of the review. We've called it the classical text on agency. Now in a new 21st edition, and very important it is too. Let's look at the book first. It's not quite as heavy as some of the other books in the Common Law Library series, but nevertheless very much the style. There's the front of it, and then there's the side. There's nothing on the back. The book itself is heavy. It's a hardback. It runs to 800 odd pages. It's paragraph numbering at the back of the book, and you can see that the typeface is slightly smaller than some of the Common Law Library texts. There's the beginning of the index there, and it's the legal taxonomy which Sweet and Maxwell use. You can see there are some appendices at the back. Then you can see the actual structure of the book itself. There's the paragraph numbering, which is how the index is structured, and footnotes. And if we go to the front of the book, there is the front page, and this is the list of the other titles in the Common Law Library series. And if we go from there, we can see the detail of the book, and you can see the history. The first edition came out in 1896 by William Bowstead, and is run along through for a long time now. And then what we've got after that is the preface, which you can see there, which is written by Peter Watts. And then after that, you can see some use of standard abbreviations. There's quite a lot of technicality in some of these books, and agency is no mean example of where it doesn't apply. It does apply here, so you do need some help, and abbreviations are particularly important. Commonwealth case law abbreviations are also particularly helpful. You can see those mentioned there and there, because we are very much, of course, in a global society today. Then you've got the table of contents running all the way through. There's information there, and then right at the end we have chapter 11, which is the commercial agents, right at the back. Then after that we've got tables of cases, very substantial number, of course, there. And then after the tables of cases, we then get to the tables of statutes. You can see the amount of case law is, from the sheer thickness of it, a huge amount. Then SI, statutory instruments. Then we get into the actual book itself. They don't actually have an index, a little mini index for each of the chapters, but it goes straight into it, and you can see where we are, the nature of the subject. The paragraph numbering there and the footnoting, and that runs all the way through. Just opening it in a minute, you can see some of the footnotes are pretty substantial all the way through. So what do we say about the new edition of Bowstead and Reynolds on agency, or this? If you or your client ever need an agency, or in the event that an agency needs you, or an agent needs you, be advised that the complexities of agency are fully elucidated in this book, the new edition of Bowstead and Reynolds on Agency, 21st edition. It's the definitive legal text on agency, and has been with us since the first edition came out, written by William Bowstead in 1896. So it's a long time ago. I'm recording this, as I said, in the summer of 2018. It's been updated over 20 times now since it first came out, and it remains ever authoritative and ever up to date, as you'll see when you have a look at the new edition, which has now recently come out as part of the Sweet and Maxwell Common Law Library. Remember, they have index cumulative updating services as well, and the indexing is particularly helpful, I think, in this book. Quite inconveniently, the term agency and agent almost always defy precise definition, and it's not too surprising then that the book's editors refer to agency as an area of law where concepts have been peculiarly troublesome. And I can say, having had some substantial work, in fact, in the law of agency, that I found it a very complex subject. No questions, very, very difficult subject. And remember, today you've got a lot of people who do not use lawyers, so they need to know about the availability of books such as these from the Common Law Library to assist them if they have a dispute which they need to remedy. Fundamentally, and perhaps to oversimplify, I don't know, agency can of course be defined as a fiduciary relationship between two persons, one the agent, the other the principal for whom the agent acts, so as to affect his relations with third parties. Or confusingly, if the agent has no authority to affect the principal's relations with third parties, he or she may also be called an agent, given that there exists a fiduciary relationship. Now, I hope you're with me so far, because that of itself, identifying who is the agent and who is the principal, can be quite an important construction issue, because sometimes you have to try and determine exactly what capacity the parties actually exist and are acting in. And I think that is very important. It's certainly something I found as a student was quite a difficult concept to grapple. So this book may help you if you're doing if you are an undergraduate studying, you may find this book of help, because the purpose of these reviews are to educate people about what's available and give you some indication of what's on the market, depending on what problem you've got. Anyway, back to the difficulties of definition. It's difficult to define, of course, this word, although it is agency which can certainly be described and explained. And it certainly is in minute detail in the book. In any case, say the editors Peter Watts and F.M.B. Reynolds, definitions are, however, commonplace of limited utility in law as elsewhere. In particular, reasoning based on presupposed definitions is often suspect. Yes, and I hope some judges take note of that, because I'm sure if you're like me, you will have come across a position sometimes where there are presupposed definitions, and I think one has to be very careful. Suspect or not, then, you might now actively argue that agency is an area of law which offers plenty of room to argue. Well, actually it does, in which case this book is an ever-present help if you're embroiled in arguments over agency, and they do crop up rather more frequently than one would think. And it provides ample coverage, of course, the book, of the subject within more than 800 pages. Now, since the previous edition appeared in 2014, there have been, as the editors point out, plenty of developments to take into account, mainly in the area of case law. Changes have therefore been made to every chapter, including the more than 100 cases that have been integrated into the text. And again, like the other areas that we look at in substantive law, case law is very predominant. Such changes, too numerous of course to list here, are summarised in the book's preface, and of special interest though would be the new material in chapter 6, which, in dealing with the duties of agents to their principals, includes rewritten material on restorative and compensatory remedies for breach of trust. Now, it's, I think, also useful to note chapters 7, 8 and 9, which deal respectively with the rights of agents, relations between principals and third parties, and relations between agents and third parties. And I will stress that the role of the third party is always something that can quite often be rather underestimated. Certainly if you're preparing for a trial, and obviously the disputes are clearly there, so do bear that in mind. I think this book helps there too. And how about the noteworthy, if not startling, 2017 case referred to in chapter 12, which involves the problems of bonds issued by the Ukrainian government to the Russian government. Again, you can see the global nature of what we now do in law, and it's, I think, again, something that is very much a theme underpinning many of the books today. And indeed, this book contains a multitude of references for researchers in the extensive footnoting, and usefully there are references throughout to other textbooks, because, as I say, this is effectively the definitive law as part of the common law library, but you've still got cross-referencing for even more detail depending on what the actual problem is. Because as I've found with a brief, you can start off with the basic general principles and then it goes down and down and down until you find exactly what you are actually looking for in something in the library. Now, there are no less than 145 pages of tables, namely of statutes, cases and SIs, and to ease navigation there is a helpfully detailed table of contents and an index, plus of course the appendix at the back containing the Commercial Agents Court's Directive Regulations of 1993. So let me summarise by saying this, that comprehensive, cogent and authoritative it is, and this new edition of Bowstead and Reynolds will quite obviously be a boon to all practitioners involved or planning to be involved through the work that you've got in any aspect of agency. And this book, if you've already done it and need a bit of a refreshing or a bit of refreshment as to what the rules are, this book will, I think, help you immensely. So thank you. Date of publication is cited at 2018, and as I say, I'm very grateful to everybody who's been involved in the publication of this book. Let's look at it again, the front page there, and you can see that there are a lot. Obviously the preface is very, very helpful to read, but there are a lot of people who have been involved in the book as one goes through, and I did like the standard abbreviations. If we just go through, I've got here chapter 8, relations between principals and third parties. I do think that's where the problems are, actually. I have to say, from my own experiences, that I've found third-party relationships can be a really difficult area to understand. You can see the paragraph numbering and you can see the footnoting throughout. But I would like to thank both the main editors and everybody who's been involved in this particular title from the Common Law Library at Sweet and Maxwell. I'd like to thank you very much indeed. You make our lives so much easier with this work, and I'm very grateful, and I know a lot of my colleagues share the same view, so thank you. Bye-bye.